I don't want to die. I'm on the verge of dying.
It's like it's a disease. If you don't treat it.
What if I told you that one of boxing's greatest legends secretly battled alcohol and drug addiction while still winning world titles? From Mike Tyson's shocking confessions about fighting under the influence to Sonny Liston's alcohol-fueled downfall and suspicious passing, we're diving into the dark side of some of boxing's biggest names. Here are 25 boxers who were drunk all the time. 1. Oscar de la Hoya. At 50 years old, de la Hoya admitted that his life wasn't as perfect as it seemed. He had money, fame, and everything people dream of, but inside he felt lost. He didn't know why he was living the way he was. He turned to alcohol and drugs, trying to escape his problems. He also had a difficult relationship with his mother, who never told him she loved him. Because of this, he would go to clubs and talk to strangers, just wanting someone to listen to him. In 2007, shocking photos of De La Hoya wearing fishnets and high heels were leaked to the public. At first, he denied they were real, but years later, he admitted the truth. He said he had no memory of taking those pictures, which showed how lost he was at that time. He was struggling with his identity and emotions, but had no one to turn to. Family was also a big issue for De La Hoya. When he started making money, he distanced himself from his family because he didn't want them asking for money. He had no real connection with them. It wasn't until recently that he told his father he loved him. Sadly, his mother passed away before he could ever say those words to her. 2. Mike Tyson. While the world saw Mike Tyson as a powerful fighter, he was fighting his own battles with alcohol and drugs. Tyson's troubles started early in his career. As he became rich and famous, he started partying a lot. He drank heavily and made reckless decisions. After losing to Buster Douglas in 1990, his life started going downhill. Things got worse in 1992 when he was sent to prison for 6 years after being convicted of inappropriate behavior. He later admitted that he was drinking and using harmful substances before his arrest. After serving 3 years in prison, he came back to boxing, but his addiction continued. For years, Tyson was addicted to harmful substances. In his book Undisputed Truth, he revealed that he used fake urine to pass drug tests. He even admitted that he was high on substance during some of his fights. His addiction became so bad that he nearly overdosed several times. At one point, he even said that he was close to dying because of his drug use. In 2009, Tyson faced a heartbreaking tragedy when his 4-year-old daughter, Exodus, died in an accident. This made his addiction even worse, and he struggled to cope with the pain. But eventually, he decided to turn his life around. He went to rehab and worked hard to get clean. In 2013, he admitted that he had been a vicious alcoholic but was trying to stay sober. 3. Ricky Hatton. In 2009, Ricky Hatton suffered a devastating loss when Manny Pacquiao knocked him out in the second round. This loss was hard for him to accept, and he fell into deep depression. Without boxing, he felt lost and didn't know what to do with his life. To cope with his pain, he started drinking heavily. He was often seen drunk in public, and his family and fans became very worried about him. Things got even worse in 2010 when a video surfaced of Hatton allegedly using harmful substance. This made his problems even more public, and people started questioning his future. His drinking continued, and his mental health got worse. Hatton later admitted that he was extremely depressed and even tried to take his own life multiple times. He would drink alone, cry for hours, and even harm himself because he didn't know how to deal with his emotions. He once said, "I was trying to drink myself to death." After years of struggling, Hatton decided to turn his life around. He got professional help for his mental health and alcohol problems. In 2012, he made a short comeback to boxing, but he lost the fight, which marked the end of his career. However, instead of letting this defeat break him, he used it as a lesson to move forward in life. 4. Arturo Gatti. During his boxing career, Gatti was known for partying hard. He often drank a lot, especially when he wasn't training for a fight. Many of his friends said he had trouble dealing with fame and used alcohol as a way to escape. His drinking also caused problems in his personal life, making his relationships more difficult. In 2007, Gatti retired from boxing after losing to Alfonso Gomez. Without the sport, his life started going downhill. His drinking got worse, and his relationship with his wife, Amanda Rodriguez, was full of fights and jealousy. Friends noticed that he was acting differently, often drinking too much and getting into heated arguments. He seemed lost without boxing, and his problems kept growing. Then, in July 2009, something shocking happened. Gatti was found dead in a hotel room in Brazil while on vacation with his wife. At first, the police said it was a self-inflicted death, but later they reopened the case because of strange details in the evidence. Many people, including Gatti's family and former trainer, believed he was harmed by someone else. Some thought alcohol and a violent argument played a role in his death. To this day, there are still many questions about what really happened to him. 5. Pernell Whitaker. After he retired in 2001, his life became difficult. He struggled with alcohol and had many legal troubles which affected his personal life and career. After leaving boxing, Whitaker started having problems with alcohol. He was arrested several times for drinking-related issues, including DUI, driving under the influence. One of his biggest arrests happened in 2002 when he was caught with a harmful substance. This led to serious legal trouble, and he was forced to go to rehab. His problems with addiction also hurt his finances and personal relationships, making life even harder for him. Even with all these struggles, Whitaker tried to turn his life around. He became a boxing coach and worked with the young fighters, including Zab Judah. He wanted to use his boxing skills to help the next generation. But even though he was trying to move forward, his issues with alcohol continued. He still faced personal struggles and found it difficult to fully escape his past. Sadly, in 2019, Whitaker's life came to a tragic end. He was hit by a car in Virginia Beach and died at the age of 55. Reports did not say that alcohol was involved in his accident, but his past struggles with addiction were well known. Up next, we have a legendary champion whose drinking may have played a role in one of the sport's most mysterious deaths. Stay tuned. 6. Sonny Liston. Liston was known for his wild lifestyle. He was often seen in Las Vegas casinos, clubs, and bars drinking heavily. Many people around him encouraged his bad habits instead of helping him. His drinking caused problems with his training, and he started losing focus on boxing. As a result, his career started going downhill. Even before he became a boxer, Liston had a criminal record. He was arrested multiple times and spent time in prison. Even after he became famous, he stayed connected to criminals, especially members of the mob. Because of this, there were rumors that some of his fights were fixed. One of the biggest controversies was his 1965 rematch with Muhammad Ali. Many believed he lost on purpose because of pressure from the mob. Liston was also arrested several times for drinking-related issues and disorderly conduct, adding to his troubles. Then, in 1970, something strange happened. Liston's wife, Geraldine, returned home from a trip on January 5, 1971, and found him dead in their Las Vegas home. Authorities said he had actually died on December 30, 1970. The official cause of death was an overdose, but many people didn't believe it. His friends and family said he never used any harmful substance, and no needle marks were found on his body. Some thought he was harmed because of unpaid debts or his ties to the mob. To this day, no one knows for sure what really happened to Sonny Liston. 7. Jack Dempsey. During Dempsey's boxing career, the United States was going through prohibition, which meant alcohol was illegal. However, many people still drank in secret bars called speakeasies, and Dempsey was rumored to be one of them. He attended fancy parties with rich and famous people, and some reports say he drank a lot at these events. But even with these stories, he always stayed focused on his training and never let drinking affect his boxing career. After retiring, Dempsey stayed in the spotlight by opening Jack Dempsey's restaurant in New York City. It became a popular place where celebrities, athletes, and fans would visit. Dempsey was often seen drinking with his guests, enjoying his time as a successful businessman. Unlike some other boxers, he didn't let alcohol take control of his life. He managed to keep his business running and remained a respected public figure. As he got older, his health started to decline, but he still lived a long life. He passed away in 1983 at the age of 87, which is rare for many boxers. Even though there were rumors about his drinking, it never overshadowed his accomplishments. 8. Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray Leonard was one of the greatest boxers of all time, but outside of boxing, he faced a different kind of fight, one against alcohol and drug addiction. In his 2011 book, The Big Fight: My Life in and Out of the Ring, Leonard revealed that he struggled with alcohol and substance addiction. He admitted that he used them to deal with stress and personal problems. Things got worse after his first retirement in the early 1980s. Without boxing, he felt lost and turned to drugs and alcohol even more. His addiction started affecting his behavior. Leonard confessed that his drinking led to violent outbursts, including incidents of domestic abuse. His personal life was falling apart, and he was hurting the people he loved. He later admitted that during this time he was not himself, and that his addiction was controlling his actions. Eventually, Leonard reached a breaking point. He realized that if he didn't stop, he would lose everything: his family, his career, and even his life. He decided to seek help and worked hard to get clean. With time and effort, he overcame his addiction and committed to living a sober life. 9. Roberto Duran. Roberto Duran is known for his aggressive style and toughness. He was feared by his opponents. One of his most famous moments was in 1980 when he defeated Sugar Ray Leonard. But in their rematch, he shocked the world by quitting in the middle of the fight, saying, "No mas, no more." Outside the ring, Duran loved to party. He was known for drinking and celebrating too much, especially when he wasn't training. Many times, he would show up to training camps overweight because of his wild lifestyle. His trainers and friends tried to keep him focused, but he enjoyed his fame and money too much. Even though he was an incredible fighter, his lack of discipline sometimes hurt his performances. As he got older, his drinking and partying started affecting his career. He gained weight and wasn't always in the best shape for fights. This led to some losses that could have been avoided if he had taken better care of himself. However, despite his wild lifestyle, Duran was so talented that he continued to win big fights even in his late 30s. Some people blamed his partying for certain setbacks in his career, but he still managed to stay at a high level for a long time. 10. Jake LaMotta. LaMotta was a heavy drinker, and this made his temper even worse. He admitted to physically hurting his wife and was known for being violent in his relationships. His drinking also made him act out in reckless ways, leading to multiple arrests. He tried running businesses after boxing, but his behavior caused many of them to fail. His struggles were famously shown in the movie Raging Bull, which highlighted how his anger and alcohol use destroyed many parts of his life. After he retired from boxing, LaMotta ran nightclubs and got involved in shady activities. In 1957, he was arrested for allegedly allowing illegal activities in his club, though he claimed he had no idea about it. His life after boxing was filled with financial struggles, failed marriages, and more drinking. He had trouble staying out of trouble and kept facing setbacks because of his choices. Later in life, LaMotta tried to turn things around. He became a public speaker and actor, using his experiences to teach others about the dangers of alcohol and bad decisions. He admitted to his past mistakes and spoke openly about how drinking had hurt his life. Even though he had a troubled past, he managed to live a long life, passing away in 2017 at the age of 95. 11. Adrian Broner. Adrian Bronner has often been seen drinking in public and posting videos of himself intoxicated on social media. In live streams, he has appeared drunk, slurring his words and saying strange things. Sometimes his behavior has even led to fights with fans and other boxers. Many people have criticized him for not taking his career seriously and letting alcohol control his actions. His drinking and reckless choices have also led to legal trouble. Bronner has been arrested multiple times for assault, DUI, and disorderly conduct. His partying lifestyle has caused him to gain weight, miss important fights, and struggle with training. In 2021, he shocked fans when he admitted that he was broke, even though he had made millions from boxing. He blamed his money problems on his wild spending and constant partying. Despite everything, Bronner has tried to make comebacks. He has promised to stay focused and stop drinking. At times, he has expressed regret for his mistakes and said he wants to change. However, his struggles continue, and many people wonder if he will ever get his life back on track. 12. Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier became famous for his tough fighting style and his legendary battles with Muhammad Ali. But after he retired in 1981, life became difficult for him. After boxing, Frazier mismanaged his earnings and found himself in financial trouble. He went from being a world champion to struggling to pay his bills. Losing his fame and success was hard for him, and he started drinking heavily. Some reports say that alcohol became a way for him to deal with his frustrations and disappointments, especially because he felt like the boxing world had forgotten him. One of the biggest sources of pain in Frazier's life was his rivalry with Muhammad Ali. Even though they had 3 amazing fights, Ali insulted Frazier many times outside the ring. He called him names like Uncle Tom and Gorilla, which deeply hurt Frazier. While Ali later apologized, Frazier stayed bitter for many years. Some people believe that his anger toward Ali made his drinking problem even worse. In 2011, Frazier was diagnosed with liver cancer. Sadly, the disease took his life later that year at the age of 67. From lost fortunes to bitter rivalries, alcohol has left a dark mark on many boxers' lives. But up next, we have a world champion who drank so much he was still intoxicated during his fights. 13. John L. Sullivan. Sullivan drank all the time. He would drink before fights, after fights, and sometimes even during fights. He traveled across the country, taking part in bar fights, boxing exhibitions, and drinking contests. People saw him as a true brawler, someone who loved fighting just as much as he loved drinking. Even though he was the heavyweight champion, he often got into drunken fights in public. His reckless lifestyle made him a legend, but it also led to many problems. Over time, his drinking started to ruin his career. By the time he lost his title to James J. Corbett in 1892, he was no longer the fighter he used to be. Alcohol had taken a toll on his body, making him slower and weaker. After retiring, he continued struggling with alcoholism for many years. He lost much of his money, and his health kept getting worse. Later in life, Sullivan realized how much damage alcohol had done to him. He decided to change and became a temperance advocate, meaning he spoke out against drinking. This was surprising because he had been one of the most famous drinkers in history. But he wanted to warn others about the dangers of alcohol and how it had nearly destroyed him. 14. Mickey Ward. Mickey Ward admitted that he used alcohol to deal with stress, injuries, and family issues. His home life was tough, and his brother, Dickie Eklund, also had addiction problems. This made things even more challenging for Ward, and at times he found himself going down a similar path. The movie The Fighter showed how chaotic his life was and how his struggles with alcohol affected his career. While he never became as self-destructive as his brother, drinking was still a problem in his personal life. Despite everything, Ward never gave up. In the mid-90s, he made an incredible comeback in boxing. He fought through the tough times and became one of the most respected warriors in the sport. His battles with Arturo Gatti are considered some of the greatest fights in boxing history. Even though he faced problems outside the ring, his ability to overcome them made him an inspiration to many. After retiring, Ward decided to help others. He became a boxing trainer and started working with young fighters. He wanted to use his experiences to guide them and help them avoid the mistakes he made. Over time, he was able to build a more stable life. He has also been open about his past struggles, showing others that it's possible to turn things around. 15. Evander Holyfield. Evander Holyfield faced serious problems with money and was accused of having issues with alcohol. Even though he made hundreds of millions, Holyfield lost most of his money. He spent too much on luxury items, made bad investments, and had to pay child support for his 11 children. One of his biggest financial mistakes was buying a $10 million mansion in Atlanta. The house had 109 rooms, a bowling alley, a swimming pool, and a movie theater. But in 2008, the home was foreclosed because he couldn't afford to keep it. By 2012, reports said he was completely broke. After retirement, there were rumors that Holyfield drank too much. Some people close to him said alcohol made his financial problems worse. He was seen partying and appearing intoxicated at public events. However, he never admitted to having an alcohol problem. Whether or not drinking was a big issue for him, his poor money choices and reckless spending led to his downfall. 16. Jerry Cooney. Jerry Cooney's drinking started when he was a teenager and got worse as he became more famous. Alcohol caused problems in his training, affected his career, and made his life much harder. As Cooney's boxing career took off, so did his struggles with alcohol. He used drinking as a way to deal with pressure and stress. But his bad habits started affecting his performance. Many believed that his lack of discipline and alcohol problems hurt his career, especially after his big fight against Larry Holmes. He could have achieved much more, but alcohol kept pulling him down. His drinking also led to depression and self-destructive behavior, making life even harder outside the ring. Eventually, Cooney hit rock bottom. He realized that alcohol was controlling his life, and if he didn't stop, things would only get worse. He decided to seek help and entered rehab. Through hard work and determination, he was able to overcome his addiction and turn his life around. Instead of letting alcohol destroy him, he used his experience to help others. 17. George Foreman. As a teenager, George Foreman drank a lot, got into fights, and was headed toward a life of crime. He had no direction and was making bad choices that could have ruined his future. Everything changed when he joined the Job Corps, a government program that helped troubled kids. There, a mentor saw his potential and encouraged him to try boxing. This gave Foreman a new purpose and a way to use his aggression in a positive way. It didn't take long for him to realize that he had a natural talent for the sport. Foreman quickly became one of the best young boxers in the world. In 1968, he won a gold medal at the Olympics, and by 1973, he knocked out Joe Frazier to become the heavyweight champion. He was strong, intimidating, and nearly unbeatable in the ring. But outside the ring, he was known for his bad attitude and arrogance. Unlike the friendly man people know today, Foreman in the 1970s was feared and disliked by many. He was aggressive, angry, and reckless, even after becoming famous. Then, in 1974, Foreman suffered a shocking loss to Muhammad Ali in the famous Rumble in the Jungle fight. In 1977, he lost again to Jimmy Young, and this was a turning point in his life. After the fight, he had a near-death experience in the locker room. He later said that he felt like he was dying and saw visions of God. That moment changed everything for him. He retired from boxing and decided to become a Christian preacher. 18. Bobby Chacon. Bobby Chacon's drinking didn't just affect his boxing, it also caused problems in his personal life. His wife, Valerie Chacon, begged him to quit boxing because she was worried about his health. But he refused to retire and continued drinking heavily. In 1979, heartbroken and feeling hopeless, she took her own life. This devastated Chacon, but instead of dealing with his grief, he drowned himself in alcohol. Shockingly, the day after her funeral, he fought a brutal match against Rafael Limon and won. However, his personal life kept getting worse. Years later, another tragedy struck. In 1991, Chacon's son, Bobby Jr., lost his life in a violent incident involving a gang. Already battling depression and alcoholism, this loss pushed him even deeper into self-destruction. He continued to drink heavily and struggled to move forward. As time went on, Chacon's years of drinking and head injuries from boxing took a serious toll on his health. He developed dementia pugilistica, a brain disease caused by repeated blows to the head. He also lost nearly all his money and spent much of his later life in poverty. He was arrested multiple times for alcohol-related incidents and went to rehab several times, but he could never completely stop drinking. Coming up, we have a champion who partied his way to rock bottom, and his shocking downfall will leave you speechless. 19. Tony Ayala Jr. Tony Ayala Jr. started drinking and using drugs when he was still a teenager. Even while training as a boxer, he would party, drink heavily, and get into fights. His trainers and family tried to keep him on track, but his violent temper and substance abuse made him unpredictable. Sometimes he would even show up to training drunk. Instead of focusing on his career, he let his bad habits take over. In 1983, at just 19 years old, Ayala made a terrible mistake that destroyed his boxing career. While intoxicated, he entered a woman's house without permission and hurt her in a very serious way. He was arrested and sentenced to 35 years in prison. Just like that, his boxing dreams were over before he even reached his prime. While in prison, he continued to struggle with substance abuse and had several disciplinary issues. After serving 16 years, Ayala was released on parole in 1999. He tried to make a boxing comeback in the early 2000s and won a few fights. But he was never the same fighter he once was. His old problems came back, and he started drinking and using drugs again. In 2004, he was arrested for possessing a harmful substance, which ended his career for good. He violated parole multiple times and spent more years in prison, unable to break free from his addictions. On May 12, 2015, Ayala was found dead in a gym in Texas at the age of 52. His death was suspected to be from an overdose. 20. James Toney. Toney started drinking heavily early in his career. Instead of staying focused like other fighters, he partied between fights and gained a lot of weight. Because of his drinking and poor eating habits, he had to move up in weight classes too fast. This affected his performance, and many believe he could have been even greater if he had stayed disciplined. His trainers and promoters struggled to control him because he often showed up to training camps out of shape. His behavior outside the ring also made headlines. Toney was famous for his trash talk, but sometimes his alcohol-fueled rants went too far. He would insult his opponents, curse in interviews, and even make wild accusations. He got into heated arguments with reporters, promoters, and even fans. Many times, people suspected he was drunk during these outbursts. As he got older, his bad habits caught up with him. In 2005, he tested positive for steroids, which damaged his reputation even more. His performances started to decline, but he continued fighting past his prime. His weight ballooned to over 250 pounds, far from the shape he was in when he started his career. Years of drinking and taking punches seemed to affect his health, and his speech became more slurred over time. 21. Leon Spinks. Leon Spinks was known for his drinking, and it affected his training. He often showed up to training camps out of shape because he partied too much. After beating Ali, he lost focus and wasn't prepared for the rematch. When Ali won the second fight, Spinks never recovered. His career spiraled downward, and he was never the same fighter again. Instead of staying disciplined, he kept drinking heavily, which led to even more problems. His behavior became erratic, and he made poor financial choices that left him struggling later in life. After retiring from boxing, Spinks had a hard time making money. He wasted much of what he earned and ended up working low-paying jobs just to survive. At one point, he even worked as a janitor at a YMCA. His years of alcohol abuse took a toll on his body and mind. He developed brain damage from all the hits he took in the ring, and his health continued to get worse as he got older. In his final years, Spinks battled serious health problems, including prostate cancer and dementia. Many believe that his years of drinking and partying made his illnesses even worse. After a long fight with his health issues, he passed away on February 5, 2021, at the age of 67. 22. Benny Leonard. Unlike many fighters of his time who relied on brute force, Leonard was smart in the ring. During his boxing career, Leonard was very disciplined. He stayed focused and did not let bad habits get in the way of his success. However, after he retired, rumors began to spread that he developed a drinking problem. Unlike other fighters who drank while still competing, Leonard may have turned to alcohol later in life to cope with his struggles. There are no clear records of excessive drinking, but many believe he had issues with alcohol in his later years. After boxing, Leonard faced serious financial problems. He lost most of his fortune during the Great Depression, which was a difficult time for many people. With little money left, he tried to make a comeback in 1931 at the age of 36. But by then, he was past his prime and could not compete at the same level. He retired again and started working as a boxing referee and trainer to stay involved in the sport. Tragically, Leonard's life ended in a shocking way. In 1947, while refereeing a boxing match in New York, he suddenly collapsed in the ring from a heart attack. He died instantly at the age of 51. 23. Tommy Morrison. Tommy Morrison won a heavyweight title and even starred in Rocky V. As Morrison's fame grew, so did his problems. He started drinking heavily and using drugs, often partying instead of training. He got into bar fights and sometimes showed up to training camps out of shape. His lack of discipline cost him big fights. In 1993, he lost his title to Michael Bent, and many believe it was because he had been partying the night before the fight. His bad habits kept him from reaching his full potential. Then, in 1996, Morrison's life changed forever. At first, he admitted that his reckless lifestyle, including drinking and unprotected intimacy, led to his condition. But later, he denied having any serious health issues, saying the test was wrong. He refused treatment and acted like nothing was wrong. Instead of taking care of his health, he turned to even more drinking and drug use. His life started falling apart even faster. Morrison's legal troubles also got worse. He was arrested multiple times for DUI, drug possession, and even weapons charges. His erratic behavior made him a controversial figure. Even as his health declined, he kept trying to make a boxing comeback. But because of his medical history, most places refused to give him a license to fight. 24. Jerry Quarry. Jerry Quarry started drinking heavily during his boxing career. He loved to party and would often drink between fights. His drinking caused problems with his training, and sometimes he wasn't in the best shape for fights. As his career started to decline, he turned to alcohol even more. He used it as a way to deal with his losses and the physical pain from years of fighting. His heavy drinking made things worse, especially the brain injuries he had from taking too many punches. After years of fighting, Quarry developed dementia pugilistica, also known as CTE. This condition happens to boxers who take too many hits to the head. By the time he was in his early 50s, he had serious memory loss, slurred speech, and trouble thinking clearly. His drinking made everything worse, speeding up his mental decline. Simple daily tasks became difficult for him, and his health kept getting worse. By the mid-1990s, Quarry could no longer take care of himself. His family had to help him with everything because he was no longer able to live on his own. His condition kept getting worse, and he struggled with both his body and mind. The man who was once a strong and fearless fighter had become weak and confused. 25. Floyd Patterson. Floyd Patterson took his losses very hard especially his 2 knockout defeats against Sonny Liston in 1962 and 1963. Those losses crushed his confidence and sent him into a deep depression. Many believe he turned to alcohol to cope with the pain and embarrassment. Even though he kept fighting into the 1970s, his mental health and drinking habits kept getting worse. As his career declined, so did his happiness. After retiring from boxing, Patterson stayed involved in the sport by becoming a coach and serving on the New York State Athletic Commission. He wanted to help young fighters and give back to boxing. But even though he had a new role, his struggles with depression and alcohol didn't go away. Over time, he became more withdrawn and struggled with his emotions. His mental health continued to decline, and he had a hard time coping with life after boxing. In his later years, Patterson's health got even worse. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and prostate cancer, which made things even more difficult. His body and mind were both failing him, and his condition slowly got worse. On May 11, 2006, Patterson passed away at the age of 71. Which story shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next deep dive into the world of sports and entertainment.